Oh, hello. My name is Ryan.
And my name is Steve, and you are listening to 60 Cycle Hum, the guitar buying, selling, trading, modding, fixing, breaking, reviewing, playing podcast.
Steve, do you think of yourself as being the host with the best voice on this podcast? Because I do. I think of you as being the host with the best voice.
So it was funny, actually. So I'm going to...
Agree with me in the comments, guys, on the Facebook or YouTube
gosh.
or wherever you happen to be.
So my first thought...
It's probably just because you don't have to edit this. I have to edit it, and I have to hear my voice, which is always awful.
Oh, so... Okay, so... Actually, this is multiple thoughts.
Ooh, hey, here we go. We're going to go into the manifold thought zone with Steve.
Hold on. Ryan, what's new with you?
We're going into the multi-thought zone with Steve.
What's new with you, Ryan?
I got nothing new, Steve. What's new with you?
I have some thoughts.
Tell me your thoughts, Steve.
So the first thing is...
This episode just went into fifth gear.
Oh, my God. So we've been trying to figure out this whole dynamic ad dropping thing. So I've been going through, and when we were testing it, listening to like different episodes from different times of the show, and I went back to like episode 160 and listened to it, and I think I just happened to land on like an episode where I don't know if it was like one where my microphone was like died halfway through, and so I was on your mic, like where you had to like fake the EQ or whatever.
Yeah.
All I know is I was like, what is that sound? And I was like, who the hell is that? And I was like, oh, it's me. But it was like, hey, this is Steve.
You realize
it was like super
high
high pitched.
It was like 2 years ago.
It was like really nasal. But
and I've never really learned how to mix things correctly. I just kind of fudge my
But
way
the thing is
everything.
I listened to like the episode previous to that, and it sounded more normal.
Oh, really?
So I think I just happened to land on something that was EQ'd weird.
Maybe you were sick.
But maybe I was sick. That's definitely possible too.
You went through a couple episodes where your voice was shot.
Yeah.
Too.
No, it wasn't.
Do you remember
even,
those?
Yeah, this wasn't like shot voice. This was definitely like either like a congested nasal tone or something went weird, so you had to like scoop all of the mids and lows out of my channel, and all was left was like, hey.
Yeah, things go bad and weird sometimes. I'd say that about 30 to 40% of our audience is comprised of fellow YouTubers. I mean, fellow podcasters at this point.
No, it's not.
So they can all relate to things going wrong in an episode, and you still publish it.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was going to say,
you're out there. You're all podcasting now because of us. It's all because of us.
There's something I noticed, and all of the people you just mentioned are going to be offended by what I'm about to say.
Say it, Steve. I want to go into the multi-thought zone with you.
The thing that I have noticed, and I've been really impressed with for the last few weeks, now you're going to screw it up. Is our like signal to noise ratio is insane. Like our signal to noise ratio on this show, I think, is better than some like Discovery Network shows, is on par with like some NPR shows.
I'll take the compliment,
like
Steve.
It's a compliment. And the reason I've noticed it is because I don't really re-listen to our show anymore, because you
already sat through it once.
I've sat through it once. I know what to expect. Like, unless you say like, hey, there were some issues on this, like, then I'll listen to it. But I
should make you edit an episode.
Oh my gosh.
And film you doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it. No, I'm saying just because like I feel like you do a very consistent job of editing, and not only that, like you really, I feel like nail the gain levels. Because our show is one that I have a tendency to need to turn down.
Oh, okay.
What that means.
I always feel self-conscious because I listen to a lot of like podcast network style shows that just blast the compression. And it's just like everybody is like bouncing almost at 0 decibels on the meter.
Right.
Where like ours, I leave some dynamics in there because we're musicians and we know the value of dynamics.
Well, where I notice it is that I can listen to our show in the car, like on my Bluetooth, without really making any.
Are other shows too quiet?
Major adjustments. Some shows I really have to like crank. I really have to crank the post gain. I have to like turn up my car radio like really loud.
I actually stopped using compression on the show.
Really?
Is that interesting to you?
It probably would be if I knew what that meant. No, I mean, I know what it means. It's something I've noticed where if I'm listening to like, say like, well, I just finished listening,
Which isn't 100% true. I use an audio dynamics processor, which brings down the peaks, which allows some of the frequencies to be pushed up a little bit.
You know the
but
difference.
I'm not using a compressor to raise.
Do you know the difference between a compressor and a limiter?
What?
Ask Scott Hamilton.
Yeah, ask Scott Hamilton. That's a good answer.
He went to college for this stuff.
I bet he did.
No, I've just noticed that like I'll be listening to like, The Greatest Generation is actually a good example because I think they have pretty good audio quality.
Sure.
I'll listen to them and then like I'll listen to our show and I don't have to adjust my headphones at all. But then I'll listen to like another show, and I'll have to like turn everything like way up.
Right.
And it's like, and then that show will end and it'll go back to like something else that is, also has like
I'm
similar,
liking how this episode is starting out, like telling me how good I am
like
at
similar
mixing the
volume
show.
episode, similar volume levels to ours. And I'm like, oh my God, my ears. So
We're a happy medium.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
We're in a, I think audio, like content wise, maybe we're not the best show, but I think from a product quality standpoint,
I think we've hit a place where we've been doing this long enough that it's not dangerous anymore. Like
I think you've got it pretty figured out.
We're pretty like our content is pretty safe now because people are used to it. But 5 years ago, guys, no one else was doing what we do.
It was only 4.5 years ago.
That's almost 5. Come on, give that to me. In January, it'll be 5.
It'll be 5 years.
It's practically October right now. We're one season away from getting into 5 years.
Season away.
So did you have anything new? It was just your multi-thought verse thing?
Yeah, that was
Multiverse
it.
of thoughts.
I don't even know how I got there anymore, actually. It's all out of my brain.
It's because I complimented your silky smooth voice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, yes.
I just feel like your voice has a better EQ quality than mine. Like there's more there to work with.
I don't like hearing my voice.
No one likes hearing their voice, but I feel like I'm at the place where I can separate myself from that aspect of it and listen to my voice in a technical sense and be like, my voice isn't as good as Steve's. I think I've earned that.
Okay.
Should we get into the show?
Yeah. This first ad was sent by Gilbert Leon. It was submitted to the Facebook group by Gilbert Leon. It was actually texted directly to me by Co Schneider.
Oh my gosh,
the ad wizard.
You know, most of our trackable audience on the Facebook group is in San Diego. Not most of it, but like the highest concentration in one geography.
Are they really?
There's like 60 or 70 people in San Diego that are on the Facebook group.
Oh.
It's probably all our friends and family.
Yeah, that's true. I'm in there. Is my wife? I think my wife's in there.
I think like Miami or something is like the next closest.
Interesting. I never look into the Facebook group.
You should do sometime. It's interesting.
Are we still at like 3% women?
Yeah, something dismal like that. We need more ladies. Ladies that are in there, tell your lady friends that we're lady friendly on the 60 Cycle Hum Facebook group because we are.
Not like those other Facebook groups.
Yeah, those other Facebook groups are not lady friendly. We are, and I don't mean that in the way like, oh, we're gonna like gather around you and cherish you and be like, oh, we're so glad you're here. It means we're gonna be cool, and we're gonna be like make sure other people are cool to you.
And we're gonna be like, hey, ladies.
We're not gonna be like, hey, ladies. We're not even gonna be like, ladies. We're not even going to do that. We just want you in our... We know that you're out there playing guitar. We want you in our audience, and we want you in our community. So this first ad...
You just made that weird.
I know. That's the thing, though. I'm saying in the group, we won't make it as weird as I just made it now in the podcast. We don't go like, ladies, in the group. We don't. And we don't go like, ladies, come on, in the group, because that's also weird. We just want you to be part of our regular community because we appreciate you and value you. I'm making it weirder, aren't I? Let's get into this ad.
This steampunk guitar is a player.
Oh, God.
Because you turn the crank and the hammers hit the strings. You can flip a lever and lift the hammers off the strings so you can play it like a normal guitar. It is self-amplified with 2 9-volt batteries. The speaker is the horn. It does have the jack if you want to plug it into an amp. Here's a link to a video of it in action. Did you go to the link?
I didn't.
Yeah, me neither.
I guess we should probably do that, huh? If we can even find it.
You want to really do?
If we can find it.
I don't even know how to really start with describing this. I love that even the stand that it's on is also makeshift.
Well, yeah, the stand's made out of plumbing pipes. Which looks like a really bad idea for any other guitar because it would damage it being hard metal, but it's fine for this guitar.
This guy like took apart a trombone, put a speaker, I guess, in the bell of it.
Yeah.
Ran it around the body. I like the fact that the hammers, you can crank them. You can crank the hammers, right?
Yeah.
This is everything you've always wanted in a steampunk guitar. You want all these things that, I mean, it's got its fair share of random.
Most of it is random decorations don't do anything. Just gears like randomly and dials and things in the way that are going to cut you.
But did you look at those?
The one detail that I like is the key tuning pegs.
I was just gonna say, what do you think about those tuning?
That's
tuning keys, Ryan.
I like that. I think that's fun. I like the knobs that he used, but you could use those on any guitar and not turn it steampunk. Some of the worst elements of this guitar are the exposed glass tubes sticking out of it in
how
random
long
places.
is that gonna last?
About 5 minutes until you bump into literally anything and they shatter.
You die.
Yeah. And you get like lead dust all over you because they were manufactured,
with asbestos
in Russia or something like that.
What do you think about this 3D printed caution high voltage badge?
The 3D printed badge puts it over the top for me of being like, freaking steampunkers and their stupid lame stuff. Like if it would have been cool if it was, a hand-tooled leather badge, which would probably have taken about the same time as designing a 3D file and having it 3D printed,
right? And
have it not look as good. Like, are we at the place yet in our technological society where we can agree that a lot of times 3D printed stuff looks bad? Like the technology is cool, the concept and the promise of the technology is cool, but most of the time the execution is just like,
right.
I mean, it's cool that the astronauts have a 3D printer so they can make the parts that they need that they don't have. But it's like you didn't need to 3D print this component.
Yeah, a lot of 3D printed stuff is especially like publicly 3D printed like this it still looks like it's.
The link for the video is a drive link.
Yeah. Just forget it, man.
I'm not going to open this.
I want to know, I guess the amplifier is inside the body. Like it must, because I don't see an amplifier hanging out anywhere.
I want to know how much of this stuff hanging off this guitar actually does anything. Like there's this giant rotary, like control switch thing that's mounted alongside of the trombone horn.
Yeah, it looks heavy.
It doesn't look like it.
How much do you think
literally does anything?
How much do you think this thing weighs?
Oh, this thing's got to weigh 80 pounds. And it doesn't look like it's built around a good guitar. It's like some sort of really bad harmony.
Oh, yeah.
Like a bad Strat knockoff from the 80s. This just looks like it would be very painful to hold.
Okay,
try to play in any meaningful way.
This person wants $1,500. Are you saying this does not have $1,500 worth of modifications to it?
It might have about $120 worth of copper in it. No, if this guy thinks this is worth $1,500, then it's only worth that to him, and he should keep it.
Yeah.
If I was going to pay $1,500 to commission a steampunk guitar.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a lot better than this.
Oh, yeah?
I'll say that.
Okay.
Like, it wouldn't just be a jumble of parts, like crammed onto a guitar. It would be a guitar designed to exist in a steampunk universe. Like, oh, this is a guitar like that could exist in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
Right.
Where maybe it does have one like phonograph horn coming out of the back of it for the amplification, but the rest of it makes sense, even though it's decorated
Right.
in a Victorian sort of way. And maybe there's, like a bagpipe arms thing to squeeze to make the sound. I don't know. But like so much of this is just non-functional and just added weight that gets in the way. Like there's a friggin' tube coming out of the neck at the first fret on where your thumb would rest, and that goes down to the fourth fret. This is not a functional player.
I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah,
before.
you can see it in this picture.
Right, I was trying to see if there was a picture of it from.
There's
like,
a
the back
tube, a
anywhere.
glass tube coming out of the headstock next to a gear that's just randomly screwed in there. I mean, the gears that do nothing is
Right, that's
a huge pet peeve
that's a
of
pet
mine.
peeve.
Like, you're steampunk. You hot glued a clock gear to your velvet top hat.
I almost wonder if this
Way to go,
guitar
jerk.
is so laden that like that thing up on the neck is just a handle because you're not supposed
It's totally
to
possible.
You're not supposed to like stand up with this guitar. You're supposed to play it like a steel.
I mean, the two, like, the yays of this guitar, the cheers of it. We're going cheers and jeers here.
Cheers and jeers.
The cheers are those key tuning pegs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a cool look. I think someone could produce a set of tuners that had that look that would be more uniform.
Yeah.
Or just be smaller tuning pegs, because I can tell that they'd be difficult to tune right now because of the size of them. I like the mixed look, but I would want them to be smaller. So that's a cheer. And then the hand cranked thing, the fact that they set it up and can execute it,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. Everything else, well, I guess the built-in amp is fine.
Okay.
They could have done a smaller contraption for that would have had the same visual effect.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 3 cheers. The rest is all jeers for me.
Okay.
Every gear
Each
that's just
vacuum tube is a separate jeer.
yeah, every gear that's just placed on here randomly, random capacitors and stuff that are just kind of like
Wait, hold on. Random what?
capacitors.
I thought you said capacitors.
No, I might have. I don't know. I meant capacitors that are just
Rewind the tape.
attached here and gigantic like transformer switches that do nothing.
Yeah.
And a copper like distilling tube here. This person spent too much money on copper with this device. It's like they collected as much old junk as they possibly could, put it all together on one guitar when they should have just, recycled it instead of upcycling it, which
Right.
is what I'm sure they tell their friends they did.
Oh yeah, it's upcycled.
I upcycled the whole thing. No, they probably spent like $60 getting that pressure gauge there that's up in the upper bout. And also, if you use gauges in your steampunk build, make sure that they move around. Like,
Oh yeah.
like figure out how to make them do that.
Well, that's
like,
a pressure gauge. I don't think
there's no way that
do
does anything.
Yeah. That's actually the one thing I like with the wrought iron stuff that Ed Chu does is he
Yeah.
takes these old like
He makes them work.
electrical gauges and uses them as like their VU.
We've had this discussion before when we trash on
gauges.
steampunk guitars.
Yeah.
That Ed Chu is outside of this conversation because he makes stuff that actually is functional.
Yeah.
And isn't a pile of like just random garbage. He
Yeah.
actually puts some design into it and makes it look good with the parts that he's
I
combining.
want to call. Yeah, it's not.
His stuff isn't steampunk.
It's not steampunk.
But it would fit in a steampunk board. You
Right.
know? If someone had a steampunk board, you could throw his stuff on there for sure.
Sure.
We're talking about his custom stuff, not like his production pedals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Although those production pedals are very handsome. I'm not dissing those at all, obviously.
Obviously.
Topic?
Yeah, this topic was sent in by Michael Freer. He says, how many of us, myself included, love the whole gear thing, but aren't sure they actually hear the differences that others do? I've never swapped out pickups, electronics, bridges, tubes, etc. in my search of improved tone. All my guitars and amps are as stock as the day they were built, and I have quite a few different guitars. I definitely think I am one of those people.
Yeah, I don't think I'm that person in every respect, but there's definitely areas within guitar gear that I am that person.
I had a Hot Rod Deluxe and I swapped speakers on it, and I don't know if it sounded any better, but I told myself it did.
I very rarely ever do anything with tubes. And the few times that I have swapped tubes in devices and amps or other things, I have not noticed a difference.
Well, and there's
other than now it works.
Yeah, and
that's probably the issue.
There's definitely a thing there. Like some guys, if you have like say even like that the Wong's amp that I have,
right.
like the VT, or like you have the VT1, I have the Mini 5 where the tubes are exposed.
It's probably because we're not the type of players that live in cranked tube territory.
Right, but also with like those kinds of amps, like it's probably pretty easy to like, throw on some, get a pair of leather gardening gloves or whatever, get yourself an UV glove. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Like the silicone oven
glove.
Yeah. Turn it on, crank it up, play a little bit, and you go, and then swap out a tube and put another one in because it's exposed right on the top. It's easy to do.
Yeah.
But the reality is like you said, like when you've replaced tubes on amps, it's because your amp was crapping out.
Yeah.
So you can.
It's hard to compare broken to.
So it's like if you spend a bunch of money, and this happens a lot, where like a guy will be like, "Oh, my amp, I feel like my amp's sounding bad," so I put in these new tubes, and all of a sudden it sounded great. These new tubes are great. It's like, well, that's because they're new.
They function.
That's like literally saying like, well, I prefer Diodario strings to Ernie balls because I had these 15-year-old Ernie balls that basically, if I strummed the guitar, they all would have broken because they're super corroded.
Yeah.
I slapped these Diodarios on.
Wow, Diodarios sound great.
Ernie ball sucks. Diodario rules. Like, maybe you just should replace your strings more often.
Yeah, your old strings sounded bad because they were old.
That's why you can't ever judge blue steels, because I only play them when I borrow guitars from you, and the first thing I do when I get a guitar from you is replace the strings.
Well, I like blue steels just because they feel different to me.
Right.
Like they feel a little beefier to me, and they have.
Yeah, they usually feel different to me. They feel rusted.
This is probably something that happened once.
It did.
I don't even remember what guitar.
It was the little stinker.
Oh, okay. I don't think I had blue steels on that.
I don't know what was on it.
I probably had Gear Supply on there.
Whatever was on it.
I was having the thought the other day that maybe on the show sometime we should do a Gear Supply recap of just everything that went down, because every now and then people are like, whatever happened with those guys? And they were sponsors of ours. So maybe we are responsible to update people.
We should do a video.
I feel like that's too douchey. I don't know.
Is it?
Tell us in the comments wherever you are if we should cover.
The reason I'm thinking
Gear Supply
video is because then there can be visuals, like you can show because some people did really like their aesthetic, so there can be visuals, and two, because like somebody commented today, like where someone brought up Gear Supply.
I don't feel comfortable with it.
Someone brought up Gear Supply in the Facebook group, and somebody replied, "Hey, I'm listening to the podcast from the beginning, and I just got to the set of episodes where Gear Supply was sponsoring the show."
They sponsored us for a while.
And so they sponsored us, and we were giving away free subscriptions for Inner Circle supporters.
Yeah. That's always a bummer when a brand associated with a show
crashes and burns spectacularly.
In
the most gross way possible.
It wasn't the first time. It won't be the last, I'm sure.
Other swaps, when I swapped out the humbucker on my jack stand, the Fender one, for Seymour Duncan JB, I definitely think I heard a difference. I don't know if that was something where like my ear just was getting more used to the sound.
Pickups is a thing where I'm like, am I really hearing a difference in the quality of the sound, or am I just hearing a difference in the output?
Right. That's an interesting point. I don't know.
I have had pickups that I thought sounded bad, but I feel like once you get to a certain level, I have a tough time hearing the difference between standard, like decent pickups and really, really good pickups.
Right. Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of like, and again, it could, how often with a guitar, excuse me, do you so one thing I've always said is like I think
he always says this.
Always say that the stock Fender Mexican pickup on the Stratocaster that was used from like at least from the mid 90s through the early 2000s, the hot ceramics, I always thought they sounded bad.
Yeah, I agree with that. They sound super bright and super thin.
Yeah.
Whenever I got a Mexican Strat from that era, I always swapped them out. I don't know where along the line they started using better pickups. I know the new Mexican line of Fenders has a much better
sound
pickup.
better?
Yeah, well, it's an Alnico.
So that's one thing, and that's a materials change. And personally, like, I mean, I guess that's technically a preference, but that's a case where I do think I could hear a difference.
If you're playing spaghetti westerns, you want that bright ceramic sound.
I mean, I guess, but I always thought they sounded harsh.
Oh yeah, they sound harsh
in a way that like wasn't just bright. It was like grating.
Oh
bright.
yeah.
Whereas like I have the Seymour Duncan Strat pickup in my Telecaster, and that thing's pretty bright. But I feel like it's bright and smooth. It's not bright and brittle.
Sure. And I can tell the differences in different styles of pickups. But it's like style, like between, like you give me two PAFs and I don't feel like I'm going to hear a huge quality difference above standard quality versus just there being an output difference pickup to pickup. Like I can hear like, or feel like, oh, this is just giving me a bit more.
Right.
Maybe it's a thing because I used to feel that way about speakers, and then I did my whole like speaker shootout and amp exploration thing last year, and I learned just how drastically different speakers can sound, which I was surprised by, honestly, because I'd never been someone who swapped speakers and did comparisons before. But it's true. It's totally true. Speakers make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And there's certain things that are kind of where was I going with this?
I don't know.
Oh, I was gonna say like sometimes like unless you own the thing and you're like active swapping and like I guess maybe recording and like listening back to it, you don't really know. And so I was thinking like I've always thought that originally I always thought that like the Gibson ceramic humbucker sounded bad, which is the 490. The classic ones are the 496R and the 500T.
Okay.
And in turn, the 498 or the 490R and the 498T, which are the
I don't know why he knows this stuff.
just shut up. Which were the Alnico. So the 496 and 500 were what was on the Les Paul Classic.
Okay.
The 498 and 490 were what were on the Les Paul Studio. The 490 and the 490 were what was on the SG at the same time. The point being, they don't actually use these pickups anymore.
Why do you have so much Gibson knowledge?
Because these were like just things. So I mean, I
These
can
were
tell
just
this all
like
back.
things.
I always thought that the 490 498 combo, and I read a lot of people say this too, like that they sounded kind of muddy.
Sure.
But then sometimes I wonder, like,
Sometimes you want muddy though.
And I always thought they sounded better like with drive.
Yeah.
Especially like the 496 500 combo, I thought was kind of like, again, ceramic, but humbuckers that they sounded kind of like too bright clean, but then they sounded like so rad with like a mid gain to high gain distortion. But it's one of those things where it's like I always wonder, like, were the pickups really not that great, or was it just the guitars they were mounted to? Sometimes you don't know. In that case, I'm still kind of leaning that the pickups just weren't something that I wanted to hear. I was kind of on the same train, and this is where this comes up, is that the when they did the Gibson Faded Studios, this Gibson Studio Faded series in like the mid 2000s, those had burst buckers in them, which was like Gibson's higher end pickup.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because like Gibson would just kind of put different pickups on different
My SG
guitars.
came with burst buckers, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and there's like I think three different. I think there's the burst bucker 3. I think there's a burst bucker 2, 3, and 5. And the Pro. Maybe there's 5 different models. I'm not sure. And I don't even know if they still produce those, or at least they put them on the guitars. One of the things that was brought up on your Gibson 2019 video, somebody pointed out that I think the SG Standard, the SG Standard in 2017 came with 61s. Then in 2018, I think they went back to like 490s. And now for 2019, they have 61s again, or something weird like that. The Gibson process for like putting pickups and things has always seemed a little random, because I think at one point the standards had the same pickups as the studio, but the customs always had burst buckers in them. So it's like their cheapest and their most expensive Les Pauls had their quote like professional grade pickups in it, and their middle one, the studio and the standard, had like their cheap, had like their budget friendly pickups in it. Something weird like that. Anyway, that was one place where I always felt like I could hear it, but then I had a Squier with P90s in it, and I always thought it sounded good, and other people were like, no, those are junk P90s. They're not even real P90s. I'm like, I don't know, man. They just sound good to me.
I mean, all the Titan pickguards that I got are loaded with Duncan designed. Or are they Seymour Duncans?
They're actual Seymour
They're
Duncans.
real Seymour Duncans. But they're, you know...
The one thing
they all sound really good to me. They're not like Seymour Duncan is like a pretty consumer friendly brand. It's not like, oh my gosh, here's this crazy boutique sort of thing.
And even with that, like
I think all those pickups sound fantastic. I mean, the bridge humbucker that came in one of those guards sounds probably one of my favorite humbuckers I've ever played with. And I think I don't know if it's just the output or if it's a tonality thing, but it just resonates with me.
I can't remember. So, you know, the thing with those two is kind of interesting because Seymour Duncan USA is like the JB, you know, the Jazz, these different models, 59, which I want to say that you have the P90s on there, but I want to say the dual humbucker one is like a 59 and Jazz combo, maybe.
I should hang the other pickguards up there on the wall next to it.
But the what's interesting with that one is you have Seymour Duncan and you have Duncan designed. And there was, the Duncan Performer series. That's what I was trying to remember. So Seymour Duncan...
This turned into just nothing but pickups talk.
Well, it's because like that's the thing that people tend to go to with like,
it's an easy way to swap. It's an easy way to like upgrade your guitars to swap pickups.
Is in the case of those, the Seymour, obviously like Seymour Duncan USA, they're being made by Seymour Duncan in like Los Angeles or wherever the hell Seymour Duncan is based out of. The Duncan Performer series were like pickups that were like basically the Squier version of Seymour Duncan. And then the Duncan design stuff for a long time, you couldn't buy those. You could only get them as an OEM pickup.
They would come in junk.
And so what would happen is...
Not junk, but you know what I mean. They would come in
they'd come in guitars. All your import guitars. Yeah, so
Schecter.
So yeah, like
Schecter was full of Duncan design.
Exactly. Your like $400 Schecter would have a Duncan design. Your $600 Schecter would have an actual Seymour Duncan pickup.
Those were always kind of a crapshoot because sometimes they would sound kind of bad, and sometimes they would sound like there's nothing wrong with this pickup. It sounds just fine.
And so with those OEM Duncan designs, like the QC was just looser, and so sometimes you can't necessarily say like, oh, this brand makes a bad pickup,
right? Because
you just don't, because it's like the consistency is just not there.
Sure.
Other things I don't think I can really hear the difference on is like wood. Wood tends to be, I think, more of a feel.
I noticed that I prefer guitars that have a more resonant feel versus guitars that have more of like a brick sort of feel, like where they just kind of soak up the resonance. Like I like a guitar. I noticed it with like lighter guitars where like you can feel the whole body kind of vibrate, and it's part of the reason why I like the Squier Bullet back there. Is it's so thin and such a small piece of wood that the vibrations of the strings just really take over the whole body.
Yeah.
I prefer that over like a heavier style guitar where the strings just kind of get the resonance just gets sucked into the wood and kind of disappears, you know.
Yeah.
But from what I understand from listening to the Lutherist podcast years and years ago, I haven't listened to it for a while. I don't even know if they're still publishing. I hope they are.
I think they are.
I hope they are. That there are like you can be picky about your woods, like what trees it comes from, but the truth is that like different densities of wood will come from the same exact tree. And so it's like the species almost doesn't matter. The difference in the density of the particular piece of wood that you're using matters.
Well, yeah, and I've heard that as well, and you know, it kind of goes into this idea that
so it's like you could have like mahogany or basswood, but if like one has, if they match density, then it doesn't really matter. Or if there's wild density differences between two pieces of mahogany, then it'll be completely different guitars and
right.
stuff like that.
And that kind of like, it goes into this idea that the old, that basically like all of these guitars that we say are like, oh, like they just made guitars better in the 50s and 60s or this and that or whatever. It's really the difference is that everything being produced, and I'm saying, I guess, strictly for like American made instruments.
Sure.
That the American made instruments, like from Fender, on like an alder body Strat now is being built with like new growth alder.
Right.
Whereas the tree that was cut down to make a Fender in the 50s might have been like 100 years old or whatever when it was cut down.
They were deforesting old growth forests in the 50s, which is where that good tone comes from.
Got to get that good, or like it was just lumber that had been sitting around for a long time already.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, we need all this alder, so we're going to cut down all these trees, or they were trees that weren't coming from tree farms. That again, how fast can we grow this tree so we can harvest it? I don't know. I've heard that. I don't know that much about trees.
I think the perception is that, oh, they were really picking the good stuff back then. But I don't know. The stuff I've heard about Leo Fender, I think he was getting whatever he could get at the price that he wanted.
Right.
It's just what was available. That is what he used.
So we've covered tubes.
Wood.
Did
we cover pickups, Steve?
I think we covered pickups.
Did you talk about pickups at all?
Like speakers?
We talked about speakers a little bit. Cables.
Well, should we talk about cables?
Sinusoid.com. They make cables.
Are we going to that now? We're just going to end the topic?
Well, what are we missing? Paint, the finish on your guitar. Does nitrocellulose sound better because it's made out of wood?
Red guitars do sound faster. Does that even make sense? Because the red wavelength is like the big wave. So when red guitars sound slower?
No, red is the faster wavelength. Not faster,
it's bigger.
But it's not the fastest. What do you mean by bigger? Do you mean the wavelength or the...
The wavelength is like it's a larger frequency. No?
No, I don't think so.
Because ultraviolet is higher, right? Infrared is slower.
Is red at the bottom?
Is a rainbow, red is on the outside.
I'm too tired for this right now.
Physics!
Oh my gosh. You might be right with the red shift thing. But I thought red was on the other side of it.
On the inside? No, it's got to be on the outside.
Is red at the bottom of the visual spectrum? Or is it at the top? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's at the bottom. I think red is slower because the wavelength is longer.
I can't remember, guys. I'm sorry that I failed you in color theory right now. Yeah, I don't know. I think someone else made a comment in reply to that probably sums up what we should have been talking about.
This probably really only matters if you're playing at 432 hertz anyway.
Let me see if we can find it. No, who cares?
Somebody said tone chasing is, or Mark Kaufman's response.
That's what I was trying to find.
Tone chasing is rooted in discontent and problem solving. Your gear does something you specifically don't like. The cover songs you play don't sound close enough to the original, or someone else's gear can do something yours can't. If you're not unhappy, you won't throw money at modding your gear. Ignorance can be bliss. Oversensitive criticality can be hell. And that's absolutely true.
I think you missed the point in that a lot of times, in my case anyways, I'm just curious and I just want to try everything. I just want to hear what everything sounds like. And it's not based in unhappiness or discontentment. It's based in curiosity and wanting to explore everything that's out there.
Well, I think, it depends. Are you chasing... Well, I guess the question is
my goal is not like, oh, if only I could get that sound, then I'd be happy. I don't have any delusion that I'll ever stop exploring everything. It's not like trying to achieve a goal. I just want to try everything that I know about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
Well,
solve any problems.
And it kind of like goes back to the
I
whole thing
know
is like,
I know that I can do everything I need to do with a guitar that has single coils, a DoD 250, a DD3, and some version of a drippy reverb.
yeah, but no one wants to watch that YouTube channel.
Exactly.
All right. Let's do our sponsor.
Yeah, sponsors.
Hey, sponsor.
We have one sponsor this week.
Yeah, it's Sinusoid Pro Audio Couture. This week we're talking about the Slate, their signature cable. It's got a tackified rubber
We've got a lot of
material.
Slate right here.
It makes things a little sticky. It really like sticks to the floor. It's really neat.
That's this Slate right there. Yeah, I use it around
so
here
grippy.
just because it does, like, you'll notice I have them dripping off of the amps over here. As they sit across various surfaces, they stay put.
Yeah.
And they don't wander around. I can run them across a desk and they won't slide off the edges. They'll stay put, which is really great for like my demo work and stuff like that when I want the cable to sit on a certain part of the table and not like pull the pedal off to the side or something like that.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a heavy duty professional grade cable that offers super low capacitance, go check out the Slate at sinusoid.com. Sinusoid. They make cables.
And smiles.
All right. This next ad was sent by Andy Bagley. This is a mint slammer.
Well, he says it's mint in quotations. That's not said anywhere in the ad.
Oh, okay.
There's really nothing said in the ad.
The ad just says 1992 Slammer by Hamer, $300, down from an original listing price of $500.
$500.
The only thing on this guitar that is 100% intact is the pickup ring.
The strings seem to all be
The
there.
strings, yeah.
The bridge is there. The reason I
Well,
grabbed...
I'm not sure if the bridge is intact because there's no whammy bar there.
Right. The reason I grabbed this ad is because this besides the color of it,
Yeah.
this is the exact guitar that was my first electric guitar.
Right.
I bought it...
Oh, yours didn't have any pickups either.
No, mine had pickups in it. Mine was actually pretty much in stock condition when I bought it. And I bought it probably 97,
Okay.
1997, something like that, for, I want to say, like $175.
How much did you sell it for?
I parted it out. So
okay.
I think I sold the body and the neck for like $100 even.
Gotcha.
Yeah, these guitars are not worth $300, especially in this condition. It's missing its pickups. It's missing a switch. Who knows what else it's missing?
Knobs
In this condition. These were a very budget-friendly guitar when they came out. They came with a very cheap version of a Floyd Rose, a very deeply licensed Floyd Rose, I'll say.
They licensed the license.
Exactly. But the fretboard was super lightning fast.
Right.
Very fast player, very interesting guitar for me to decide to be my first electric. I damn near like cried myself to sleep the first time I tried to change strings. It took me hours trying to figure out how to change strings on a Floyd Rose because I'd only played acoustic before this.
Yeah.
A big learning experience for me. And it's this sort of thing where like I look at it and it's like, it's kind of a trash guitar now. But I spent a lot of time with that guitar. I completely disassembled that guitar multiple times, like exploring what I could do with it, modding it. I did coil splits on that guitar. I did completely new switching on it. I was soldering things for the first time ever, swapping pickups. I mean, you talked about that for about 58 minutes. And the first topic is changing out pickups. But I dropped a Duncan designed. The first pickup I ever bought to drop in and to mod something. I dropped into the bridge of this. Eventually, I took out the middle pickup and did like a double humbucker thing. And then after that, I dropped down to one pickup. So I went on this whole journey where it's like, I got to have as many switches and as many controls as I can have on this guitar as possible.
Right.
And by the time I was done with it, I had gone down to one humbucker.
Was it like directly wired to the pickup?
Yeah.
To the output?
Yeah, there were no knobs or switches at all. Yeah, I forgot about that. Also, the real expense with this guitar is that I was cranking down the pin onto the string in the Floyd Rose, and I cranked it down too hard, and I broke the little block that pinches the string. So I took it to the local guitar shop, I was like, I broke this part. Do you have a replacement? And they're like, that Floyd Rose is licensed so deeply. The inception is too deep. We will never be able to find a part that fits exactly there. We have the replacement part for real Floyd Roses, but they don't fit in there. And so they pitched to me replacing the bridge with a real Floyd Rose, which is worth about twice as much as the guitar, which is why I parted it out when I sold it.
Right.
So I sold the bridge separate. But yeah, I dropped like $200 something on a new bridge for it.
Yeah.
Plus the installation cost. But it completely changed the guitar into a better guitar. So there's that.
All right. Question.
Yes.
Your garage is blown up by terrorists.
Okay.
Insurance pays you full value for all of the guitars you have.
Why are terrorists blowing up my stuff?
I don't know, man. Because they hate music.
Musical terrorists, huh?
How?
I only know one person who fits that description.
How cheap does this guitar have to be? Assuming that it has all the pickups and everything. How cheap does this guitar have to be where you're like,
I'll go get it.
I got a bunch of cash. I could,
You're saying insurance wrote me a check.
Insurance wrote you a check.
And I don't have any
for the value
guitars.
of all of your guitars. So you can still get like anything else that you want.
You sure terrorists were behind this and I didn't just flood the garage somehow?
I don't know. So basically, how cheap would this guitar have to be for you to be like, yeah, I'll ride that nostalgia train again?
Here, I'll posit a different hypothetical.
Yeah.
If I was walking through the swap meet and I saw this and I had, it's normal for me to go to the swap meet and have $100 in my pocket.
Okay.
If I was walking through the swap meet and saw this, I would probably try to haggle under 50.
If it's all intact, like ready to play?
And that's just me buying out of nostalgia.
So you're saying, okay, so you're saying like $50.
I don't want it I don't want another one of these in my life again, but under $50, I would be like, yeah, I'll go down that road.
All right.
Because the stock pickups were pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the stock bridge was really bad, but the neck was good. I also did my first refinishes on this guitar. I stripped it and I refinished it multiple times.
Yeah, I remember it being blue, like a dark blue with a silver stripe.
Yeah, the rattle can job that was super thick and super sticky.
So gross.
Yeah, and then I stripped it down to be bare wood that I stained, and it was like just a dry wood sort of look. It was a fun guitar, and honestly, slammers are a really great bargain for the money. They're great playing guitars for the money, but this line had some issues. I think it was called the Centura line. It's basically a super strat.
Right.
Yeah. Next topic.
Yeah, this topic was sent in by Adam Miller. Apparently, he's been sending it in for a while.
Or he just thinks that we're going to ignore it, and this is his first try, and he's going to keep saying it until we address
I've seen
it.
this one before.
I don't remember it. Sorry.
Adam Miller says...
I can't wait to hear what he says.
I'm going to keep suggesting this. If you could play any guitar in all of history for 30 minutes, which one? Or if you could play through any rig in all of history, what would it be?
I could probably name a couple.
All right.
You want to lay some on me?
Yeah, I'll start with, even though I don't play the style, I would say the Jaco Pastorius.
Really?
Fretless jazz bass.
I'm
through the
surprised,
acoustic. I believe he played an acoustic 360, 361 combo, which is wild because that was like just a huge, massive. Or the alternative. The reason I went with Jaco is because I knew what bass he played.
Is it Jaco or Jaco?
I don't know.
I watched a documentary about him a while back.
I'm just making it all up now.
I don't remember. But it would be interesting. I could see you having fun messing with his fretless bass. Because didn't he make that modification himself? He pulled the frets out?
Yeah, I think, I actually don't remember, but possibly. The other way I would have gone, also, like this is really all about that rig, because the other way I would have gone is the John Paul Jones 70s Zeppelin rig. But the problem is that I don't really...
Oh, is that one with that giant speaker situation with all the horns?
And that's the same thing that Pastorius played.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it looks like John Paul Jones maybe played alembic basses.
Yeah.
It looks like he played a lot of different basses, but...
when I went to that fretboard journal conference, like 2 years ago or something like that, I watched two guys talk about that whole scene. I think there was a guy there who worked for Alembic, and just the ridiculous things that they were trying to do to get the best bass signal ever with the technology that they had, and where they've ended up with the technology is just ridiculous. Like, guitarists are nowhere near like that level of experimentation with our signal path.
Well, people who like Alembic's always kind of been on that train of like doing things that are like very, I guess, are very eclectic. Well, but think about like the kinds of artists that play Alembic. Like you had a lot of guys in.
How do we pronounce it?
Is it not Alembic?
We were saying Alembic, and then you said Alembic. Alembic? Is it Alembic?
I have no idea. I don't know. I feel like they've always been kind of a pioneer in that field. And, you know, they've had artists. When I think of them, I always think immediately of John Entwistle from The Who.
Sure.
And of the Grateful Dead. And so these are both kind of like bands or artists that had, you know, kind of like jam band kind of songs. Like, I wouldn't call The Who a jam band, but they definitely had songs that were like 10 minutes long.
In that era, everyone was jamming.
Right. So, you know, I think they did kind of cater to a very specific sort of player that wanted like a customized instrument. And so part of that is trying to figure out what all crazy, interesting options are available.
Yeah. I think also in that era, people were really relying on their personal rigs for their stage volume and for the audience volume. So they were trying to make rigs that the band could use to project to an entire huge audience before like PAs became as powerful as they are now. And now everyone can do smaller rigs that they don't even use for their volume on stage because they're using the monitors. So things were all kinds of crazy in the 70s. Rigs that I'd like to get into, I would love to like go back in time and play through the amp that Link Ray used on his early recordings of Rumble, where it's like the slashed and destroyed speakers,
right? And
see and hear exactly like what that was like, because I've tried to do it and it like never sounds right. So I'd love to see that actual rig and play through it. I'd love to play his guitars that he was playing at the time. You know, same with the Kinks had the same thing going on, right? Slash speakers. I'd love to.
Oh, here's John Paul Jones with the jazz bass. Apparently, he just played freaking everything.
Just play whatever people.
Here's one with a Fender Bass V. Remember the Bass V?
Yeah.
Freaky thing. Sorry.
Man, who else? I'd love to be able to play Chris Ballou's 2-string bass guitar or the 3-string Git bass from Presidents of the United States of America. Man, what else is there? I mean, we're talking about like a 7 Minutes in Heaven situation with like famous guitars. Jeez.
I mean, I feel like I've been on a little bit of like a Floyd kick lately, so part of me just wants to play like any particular David Gilmour setup that also involves his like it number one, the black is it him who called his guitar number one, the David Gilmour black Strat.
Right. I think it would be worthwhile to like just pick a famous player and be like, yeah, I played their guitar. It wasn't that great, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, the guitar was super good. That's why he played so good.
I'm sure there's like a bunch of people out there who'd be like, oh, obviously Peter Green, Les Paul. Like,
right.
That's, and so, you know, that's kind of an interesting
thing. Do you think
thing.
anyone wants to sign up to go back in time and suck on Peter Frampton's talk box?
Oh my gosh.
I just want to use the same talk box right after he used it.
Well, you know, I don't know if I could put down a half hour on it, but
I think you could go half an hour on a talk box, Steve.
I was going somewhere with this.
I'm sure you were.
Would be to go play the log for half an hour.
Oh yeah. Oh shoot, that'd be
Like,
a lot of fun.
Like, so that's the other side
like
of it.
the prototype Les Paul guitars.
Do you spend your
I think I would have a lot of fun
hour,
with prototypes.
Like, picking like the first instrument, or do you spend like, yeah, I'd spend half an hour with any like Bigsby, the original like Bigsby electric guitars. There's some like just some weird old stuff in there where it's like they're not necessarily associated with any particular artist from a recording standpoint.
Play like the first like broadcaster or something like that.
Right. Like an old Snakehead.
Yeah.
And there are people who actually have like
I think that's much more my speed, and obviously like our speed
like that's
together.
That's like we are
we're more gear centric than we are player centric.
Yeah, and that's
our mentalities.
That's more like more broad. It almost feels like a cop out answer because they're not.
I don't think so.
Because they're not historic in the sense of like, you say like, oh, I would go back and play. I'd play the White Hendrix Strat from Monterey or whatever. Where it's associated with a particular event,
right?
Or a particular,
probably played like any Strat off the shelf.
Would you go play one of George Harrison's Rickenbackers from like the Ed Sullivan Show, something like that. But even there, like it's less like, do you connect with the piece because of the artist it's associated with,
right?
And say like, okay, it's this artist, and it's a really cool guitar that I love. Like, I mean. Or do you say like, well, this isn't just like an artist that I have enjoyed in some level. I have a little Beatles on the brain because I listened through Abbey Road today for the first time I've ever listened through a Beatles record. Wow! Actually,
congratulations, Steve.
Yeah. But it's kind of that idea of like, do you go for something bigger, like than just this is this guy's rig and I know he used it on like this record or that record, because I
want to try all the gear that's like weird and like different some way. Like it just popped in my head, like I'm not like a huge Elvis head or anything like that. I want to play one of his acoustic guitars that was like completely leather wrapped, and so like see what that feels like and sounds like. Things like that.
Would you play another one that's kind of along those lines is Trigger, Willie Nelson's acoustic guitar.
Yes,
where.
See what's holding it together.
There's nothing. I don't want to say Willie Nelson's music is compelling because he's clearly like one of the most prolific songwriters of modern music.
Yeah.
But when you think of oh yeah, like what's a rig you'd want to play? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure a lot of other guys are saying like, oh, there's 1,000 acoustic guitar players that would come up before somebody goes like, oh, what about Willie Nelson?
Sure.
But again, there's that historic, like that's a guitar that when he passes at some point, like that guitar is going straight to the Smithsonian or to like
Smithsonian,
the Smithsonian, or like
I'm not one to judge,
or like the Grand Ole Opry Museum or something.
Yeah.
Like it's going straight to like a place where it's going to be like, never touched
like
again.
Put it in a plexi box next to the Constitution, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, he had that red, white, and blue strap, right?
It's American.
Has there been a musician that's more American than Willie Nelson?
How do you? I'm not going to get into judging how American people are, Steve. That's my that might be your thing to figure out who is more and less American, but that's not my jam.
Just call me Steve McCarthy. All right.
What kind of shoes are you wearing?
Shut up.
We got to burn those bad boys.
They're not Nikes, I'll tell you what. My Nikes never leave the Actually, my Nikes have never left the house.
Oh, really? They're your house shoes?
I have a pair they're my indoor workout shoes.
I had a pair of Nikes that were purple, and they were pretty fly.
Were they like classic jogger?
I don't know the model. I don't care about
No,
Nikes.
I'm just saying, like, were they like a jogger, like a vintage style shoe?
I don't know.
No, okay.
I forget what they
like
are.
They
might be here in the garage.
I'm saying, like, are they the same
shoe.
style as like your Onitsukas?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they're not like vintage style or anything like that.
All right, you got anything else?
They're kind of like skate shoes, I guess. Man, well, is there anything else I'd want to play? It's hard to. You guys say it in the comments wherever you happen to be.
If you have made it to the 1 hour mark and you're on YouTube, let's hear what rigs you would play through.
Yeah.
This last ad was sent in by Justin Svek.
This
is
doozy.
a Keybass. I decided to sell the Keybass I made, fully functional MIDI controller and bass guitar, Washburn bass, Arturia keystep controller, $250.
I'm going to be honest with you, Steve. You know how I like to tinker. I've thought about doing this before.
Really?
With a guitar. It's a bass with a keyboard mounted to the lower bout of it. And there's an octopus painted on the whole thing.
And it has the proper artwork orientation.
It does.
And I just...
And the placement for playing the keyboard is in a decent place.
Yeah, and I just actually realized that not only... I thought the colors were like combined scheme-wise. The octopus flows from the bass onto... the keyboard.
Yeah, the whole thing is painted.
This is actually like, I mean,
there's a little bit of weight relief in the upper horn of the bass to compensate for the keyboard.
Is that what that is?
There's 2 big holes drilled in there.
The key step, I looked it up. It's like a $120 controller on Zazounds. It was like $250, the one that I saw on eBay. So I don't know what price is really accurate. This looks like a pretty budgety Washburn bass. It's probably like $150 new.
Oh yeah,
$200 new. So there's not necessarily like a ton of value wrapped up in this. But
I like that the head of the octopus is actually a bomb. It's got the fuse coming out of it. That's a fun graphic.
I feel like this is a kind of thing where if I was in...
How do you like that upper fret axis? Basically got nothing past the 13th fret.
If you're playing that high, you're not playing bass anymore anyway.
That's a good point. Says the guy who wants to jam on Jocko's bass.
It was a full-length bass. It's not like I have to play high.
I don't know why anyone uses more than one string on a bass. You got all the notes you need on that first low string.
Yeah. I don't get it either. So I would so 250. I don't know if this is like 250, but I would say like if I was in some kind of like DIY like punk meets EDM, techno, whatever. Like
if you were in a band that played at the Park Gallery, you would use this.
Exactly. Like
an experimental young person.
I would say like if I was in right, or if I was in like I'm thinking something that's like a smash up of like gosh, I don't know.
I hope you find it in your head, Steve, whatever it is.
Of like the Ramones and Devo.
Yeah. Yeah, this could work in a Devo sort of scene very well. I mean, you get keys and the bass.
Yeah.
I saw a mariachi band play in Old Town a while back, and the bass player was playing keys at the same time. So he's holding down bass lines with his left hand, tapping them, and then playing like trumpet parts on the keyboard at the same time.
That's cool.
So maybe this is a basement for a mariachi band.
I mean, you could do a few different things with it. I do like the execution more than I thought I would. I think there's a place for it. I don't know if this is $250.
No, I think the price is like it's going to go for whatever someone will offer him.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what the price should be, but if it was a swap meet scenario, like I was saying,
right,
I'd be $100 and under.
The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is trying to look as close as I can at the hardware.
The hardware all looks like clean.
Yeah, everything looks pretty clean. This isn't like beat up. A lot of times when you see stuff like this, it's like beat up and neglected.
Yeah.
This is like beat up, but it's not neglected.
Like a look. Like they did a paint job on it to look a certain way. And you can tell it's a cheaper Washburn. And it's on a really messed up leather chair. I mean, I know the chair probably doesn't come with it, but you can always haggle.
Hold on, I'm looking out this window in the back. Is this in the Park Gallery?
It very well could be. It's got a blue denim strap on it. I don't know. But really, we should be talking about the concept of it. Like, in my head, when I wanted to do this sort of thing with a guitar, I don't even know how to play keys. I can I can dink out a little tune here and there.
I'm trying to figure out if this is like...
in my head, it would be like the output of the keyboard would run directly into the electronics of the guitar so that you can share the same output.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's even possible.
And then you just run it all through the same effects panel.
Exactly. But I bet this thing needs power, unless it's like battery powered.
Oh yeah. I bet
you think there's
it might be battery. It's designed to be a portable
then it's probably
keyboard.
battery powered. I always want to get, the little Casio keyboard that our friend Davey has. It's tiny. I keep sticking to this paper. It's tiny. It's like this small. I always thought about getting one of those, and it's got the feature in it where you can program a tune into it, and then you set it to a certain mode, and it doesn't matter what key you press. It always presses the next note in the sequence. So you could have a pre-programmed sequence of notes that you just sit there and tap in time to what you're playing.
Interesting. I don't think I've seen that.
So I could program a song into it and then fake it on stage by playing whatever.
Next time I go over there, I'm going to be like, hey,
ask him about
Dave,
it.
I hear you have a magical keyboard.
It's a cute little Casio thing. I thought about getting one for myself just because they're cute.
All right, you ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, let's get out of here. Let's call it a day.
This week's song was sent by Joey Jaworski. He says, so here's a song submission. This project isn't completely dead, but won't be coming back under this name when the next album is done. Gear-wise, lots of Jazz Masters, a Fender Twin, an AC30, buttload of overdrive pedals. Really can't remember exactly what was used. He says, this is my favorite song from the era of this band. The new stuff should be lots of fun. We'll update with new material once it's finished. This song is called Hallways. The project was called These Bridges, but apparently it's going to be called something else. So thanks, Joey, for sending it in. We're actually at a point where I wouldn't say we're running out of songs, but we're definitely at a lower number of songs than I'm comfortable with. So if you'd like to submit music, send it to 60cyclehumcast@gmail.com. MP3 attached to the email is preferred. But we can work with Google Drive links too, I guess.
No, don't say that, Steve. We want
your
MP3s.
Just send us MP3s.
Send us your MP3s. If you can't figure that out, then what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Send us an MP3. Come on. They're small. You can put them in an email.
All right. For Ryan, this is Steve.
And for Steve, this is Ryan.
Bye.
Later, guys.